Well, hello there, and tell me if this sounds familiar. You've got a business, it's growing. There are going to be milestones, steps, achievements. You cannot do it alone. It's time to hire a team, maybe, but you're not sure what should be your next step, what you should be doing, where you should focus your efforts. Fortunately, if that's you, sitting with me right now is James Schramko, who is the founder of SuperFastBusiness. As a coach, he has helped literally thousands of business owners scale up. And also, you might not know this, but in another life, he was the manager of a Mercedes-Benz dealership. Hello, James. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, James. Nice to be here.
Now, we're talking about teams and building teams as a way to scale up. But there are some questions that we should probably ask ourselves before we build a team. Where do you want to start, James?
Maybe start with my own journey on that, because as a general manager of a Mercedes-Benz dealership, I had over 70 staff available to me on a daily basis. And at night, I was learning how to build a website. You know, I really wanted my own business. I really figured the online world could be something big. This was in 2005, 2006. And so by night, it was just me. And I knew from, running a big business, there were a couple of things that made the business awkward. One was stock. We had tens of millions of vehicles and parts in our business, and they go obsolete. They have dates on them. So I knew I wanted a business that didn't have stock. I knew I didn't want to be locked down to a physical premises, because I just didn't understand why people suit up and drive into this place every day. If the world is open to you, you could do it virtually. And it's only taken till 2020 for others to realize this is a possibility, by the way. So I was really early on that. And the third one was I didn't think I wanted any staff, because staff are a pain in the butt. And having risen to general manager and having all these staff, there's constantly things that you have to do. You got to do the hiring, you got to do the training, you got to do the firing. And it was something I wasn't looking at. So I started my business by myself, but I quickly realized you can only scale so far when you're doing absolutely everything. And the overwhelming majority of people I speak to when I'm coaching, they are stuck doing everything. So they might be high profit, they might have a simple business, but usually they're overworked, they're stressed out, or things just aren't getting done because they've got no resource, they have no leverage. And so team is really the ultimate leverage and resource if you use it right. And most people are not trained for it, because you don't learn that going through university. You don't learn it if you're in a small retail environment. Not everyone gets promoted to being a manager or a leader in their career before they go into their business. Like even whether you're an electrician, a pizza maker, or whether you're an academic who's good at teaching us particular expertise, this whole thing of having other people do your stuff seems foreign. But the reality is it's actually, we already do it. We just don't realize it. Anyone who's ever ordered a takeout meal has done it. If you've ever sat and had a meal at a restaurant, you know that it makes sense sometimes to get someone else to do all the things rather than to grow the food, prepare the food, cook the food. You can just sit there and have it put in front of you. Now, that same option is available to you in business. And I have to say that the reason I have a good life now is because I have a wonderful team who does pretty much everything in my business except for the very few things that only I can do, like talk to you on this particular recording. That's something my team won't do, but they'll do everything else.
And I think we're never very aware at how we're using our time and we're spending our time. We can be quite aware at how others spend their time. That's easy to see how other people do it. But when it comes to us, a day can go past and we'll go, how did that happen? We're just not very self-aware when it comes to managing our own time and our own priorities.
It's true. It's actually the first thing I teach in my book. I've got a book. It's called Work Less, Make More, right? And I teach effective hourly rate, because it was only after I started mastering my own time that I realized, well, time is a resource I can purchase. I can actually buy other people's time. They will sell me their time. And the traditional way people do that is in a job. In the online world, There's many ways you can go about this, and that's probably a few things we could discuss. You can buy tasks, so you could pay for something to get done. You can buy a person's time in a segment, so part-time, or by the hour on a variable basis, or you could employ them full-time as a full-time contractor. Typically is the way that it would work, especially for Australian or US or UK businesses. They're often hiring people in other countries. So that means they're not going to be under the same employment regulations in terms of having to take the tax, the payroll tax. They don't have to provide superannuation or retirement. They don't have to provide health funds, which is a big thing in the United States market. So you end up just basically being able to recruit from anywhere in the world for anything you need done. And once you understand that you don't have to do the things that you're not enjoying, or in my case, I was doing things I wasn't even that good at. I used to sit there once a year and do my accounting on the kitchen table for 2 days. I hated that.
Or even just
now someone in my team updates my Xero on a daily basis, and my accounts are like up to the minute. I have people processing my media. Now, almost every business these days should be producing some kind of content or media, and I'm sure this is close to your heart, James, having run a media business. And when you create that media, it's now much easier to get people to process, syndicate, distribute that media. I wasn't really the best editor for my content, and I make a lot of content. So when I brought on a team and they started editing my stuff and getting it ready to put out there on the internet and sending out the emails and working on my website, it was like, wow, there's actually not that many things for me to do.
So let's talk about this. There's a couple of things here. One, if you haven't done so already, Google James Schramko, an effective hourly rate, and you've probably come across his book and buy it. Two, you were talking about different types of roles here. And I know myself, there are different types of roles that I've embraced when growing my business. The outsourcing, outtasking thing is interesting. For example, putting together a PowerPoint presentation. It could take you about 4 hours to create a PowerPoint presentation, or you can hire someone else to do it for $25, and it will be better than what you did. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about the difference between tasks and team and different ways to build people.
This is a great question. A common objection I get is people say, well, it takes me more time to go and find someone and get them to do it than if I just did it myself. That's probably
first
true.
Time.
Right.
First time it does. After that,
true the first time. The problem is if you're doing that every time, which is, there's a lot of jobs boards out there. There are places where you can hire out for tasks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go down that path. I've never used an outsourcing job boards yet, and I've been online for a while, and I haven't found the need to because of other ways. Firstly, I'll use referrals. I will prefer to use someone for the long term. So for example, the PowerPoint design, I would go to my friend who's a designer, and he's the same guy who will design my website. He'll design my book cover. He will design a PowerPoint presentation if I ask him. He'll design a template for our emails. He'll design a download PDF version of our show notes, etc. So having a designer who you build a relationship with over time, you can still pay per task, but ideally you're finding that contact who you can use many times, rather than like each time you have a task, you pop up on the jobs board, you've got to field potential people to do it. You may get the thing you're after or not. You might have to try a few, kiss a few frogs to find your prince.
Frogs.
If you do that method, then at least when you find good suppliers, keep them in your little supply Rolodex, and you can use them over and over again. I've got various contractors who I supplement my full-time team with. Contractors who write really in-depth, long, rich articles. I've got contractors who do design, because often design is like, you've either got it or you don't. It's very hard to train someone to do design. They have to, they've got to be in the trenches and they have to have natural talent. So I have a designer. I've got a copywriter I'll hire from time to time for really serious, heavy lifting sales pages, because again, a little bit harder to get that talent in-house. We can do light level copy. We can write blog posts and emails and tweets and things. But when you want to get that super important one, you find a specific copywriter. The other one I hire is a traffic person. This is a really common one. A lot of people are trying to run Facebook ads, YouTube ads, Google ads, etc., Amazon ads. Sometimes it's a slow and expensive process to try and train someone up for that. So they're the sort of high level jobs that I contract out, usually to Westerners. And I'm using a central management tool called Slack, and I can actually invite them into our workspace and they can work with my existing team. So we're kind of a hybrid model. Now, in terms of the people in my business, this is a really interesting one. I started 11 years ago hiring people full-time for my business, and most of them started from scratch. The only experience they had was working in a call center in the Philippines for a USA company. They'd never heard about WordPress or how to send emails from Entreport or any of that stuff. But over time, they can use the training resources those tools provide. You can buy them books, they can do courses, you can show them what you're doing if you know it. And this is important. You don't have to know how to do something to get someone trained up on it, but you do know where to find someone who does know how to do it, or a course that they can go through that can teach them that. So I'm buying them courses on social media management. I'm buying them courses on content. I'll give them editing software, etc., if they want to do a better job with our podcast. And our core team over time have built incredible experience. And one of the great things is the labor cost is extremely favorable for Western businesses to hire from the Philippines. They have a really great English speaking culture, very values-based, similar. Most of them are Catholic in terms of religion. Time zone wise, it's definitely an advantage for Australian businesses because we're only ever 2 or 3 hours apart. And it's an 8-hour direct flight when you're allowed to travel to go and visit your team, which when you've got 5 people, I would recommend you do, because after you visit people and get face-to-face, you'll find your productivity and your relationship goes to the next level. And that's when you realize your team members are actually human and they're not some cog in a machine or a Swiss Army knife that you can deploy to do anything. And
there's a couple elements to this, and I do want you to run through specifically the team roles. But I know that for me, I do use out-tasking sites, but I go into it looking for a permanent person. So I'll usually hire 3 people for the one job, and one of them won't show up, which is terrible if that's the only person that you hire. One of them will do an okay job, and then one of them will really, over deliver. And then, then it's deliver lots of praise, bonuses, and then that person becomes
pay early,
part of the team. Well. What's that?
Pay nice and early. Don't nickel and dime people.
All that good stuff. I've got people that have been working with me for 8-9 years that I met on some of those sites. But we also have people in the Philippines as well, too, and some other places. So there is a balancing act between out-tasking or hiring a team. You obviously love the idea of building the team. For me, I'm really curious about what team roles that you would have if you're scaling up your business. What are the key roles that you would want to hire or that you recommend to your clients that they hire?
I've put a lot of thought into this, and I want to challenge the notion of roles that traditional businesses have, because I think that's outdated. When we're in one thing about people in the Philippines, for example, they really value training and they love to be stimulated with challenges. So if you want a typical role, the approach an employer is going to take is they're going to specify the role, they're going to run an ad for that role, and then they're going to look for people with 3 years experience in that role. I think it's quite flawed, because you're the only people you're going to get are people who have been doing that role and are no longer, for whatever reason, could be their fault, could not be their fault, and not doing it wherever they were doing it before. That's already a red flag for me. I much prefer the advantage of hiring early, training, and getting that loyalty. And then they build the intellectual property and a brain, if you like, around your business, so they can start making decisions and start thinking for themselves. Number one complaint I hear from employers is my team member doesn't think for themselves. Why can't they think for themselves? It's because you haven't taught them to think. You haven't shown them what the 80-20 in your business is, like where the priority sits. They don't understand the culture or why you do things often. And maybe there's no documentation or systems in place like double checking that would remove the risk for them. And one other thing that's very important about the Philippines culture is they're kind of scared. They scare easy. So if you can de-risk your workplace, if you can make it a safe place, psychologically safe workplace, like EL talks about, then you bring out the performance in these people. So what we do is we break the roles down into tasks. So I would say the definition of a role in our business is it's just a collection of tasks. So we don't have specific names for roles in our business. We just have people in the business. There's about 6 people in my team, and they do different things, but almost all of them can do most of the things. And that's a really interesting thing. We have this hybrid vigor, this cross-training strength, where now a few things can happen. People can go on leave and nothing gets dropped. People can take on new tasks because someone else can take over their old task. These things can't happen if you lock people into one role, or if you only have one person in the business who can do that role. So I've got people in my team who do the most eclectic mix of things. How's this for a role? I don't know what you call this one, but one girl in my team she invoices my high-level clients at the end of the month. She does our bookkeeping. She sends out emails, and she does our social media posts on my Facebook page.
Yeah, that is invoicing and social media posts doesn't seem to be the same type of brain type.
They don't seem to be. I've got one who edits podcasts, but also does the social, does the blog post tasks and tweetables and things. Another one does illustrations, but also does the forum. Like, we have a membership, so she's organizing the materials in there, editing those, and she also has a hand in sending out our email broadcasts. I've got another one who does web development things, anything technical, from checking server security, domain names, clearing out emails, but she also is involved in innovation. So she's looking at areas where we can make a shorter path, whether we can update materials, whether we can improve usability. And she's working hand in glove with our support desk person. My support desk person answers tickets, but also makes videos for our social media.
Actually, that's something that's happening in our world too. Our support person has just begun to create.
Well, they know exactly what's on the customer's mind. They actually know, they're informed on what content is going to solve the support challenges or the queries we get, the pre-sales queries. We don't have a salesperson in my business, but my support team, of which I think 4 or 5 of the 6 can all do support. They answer questions in pre-sales that turn into sales. That's still our #1 converting channel for my business, because over time, they understand what problems we solve. They understand which one of our solutions are a good fit for our prospect. And they've learnt how I like to answer the tickets. And I do have a strong sales background. So using that Slack epicenter, they're able to show me things they don't know how to solve, and I can solve it with them and train them as we go.
Yeah. So you mentioned Slack before, and I just need to paint the picture for some people out there. I'm assuming you don't have 5 people, 6 people sitting all in the same room in the Philippines. I'm assuming that they run their own offices and you have team systems that you use to manage this process.
Yes, they're working from wherever they want. We, much like Ricardo Semler or other leaders who have gone a little bit outside the standard loop, we don't use time tracking software. I don't know what the hourly rate is for my team. I pay the same amount twice per month all year long. They can have whatever leave they want as long as the job's covered, whatever they're working on. And I don't even know exactly what each one's working on, but it doesn't matter as long as the output is there. So what I see is, I see them letting me know what they're working on, and then I see them letting me know what they worked on. And they come to a meeting once a week for about 15 minutes where we discuss the business, where it's going, what's happening, what's important, how we're interrelating with each other, what sort of resources we might need to do a good job. It's a good opportunity for me to highlight things that we're doing well and to let them know what I'm doing behind the scenes as well, because we're all quite inclusive when it comes to the business, because we know if we look after that business, that we're all going to be fine. And again, that safety is really important.
Do you encourage them to train each other, or do you shoot videos using tools like Loom and other tools and give them an overview of what's going on? How do you manage all that?
I know that's popular. If you wanted to transfer a task, I call this a task transfer. Yes, you could shoot a Loom video. When I was teaching my editor how to edit my podcast, I just hopped on Skype and we screen shared, and I use a I, we, you method. So I will do the first part and show her exactly what I'm doing, and I'm just talking out loud, and she can record it and she can make notes for sure. And then the second part is we do it together, sort of as she's feeling it out. And then I watch her do one in entirety from start to finish. And then once she can do that, then she's most of the way there. But the next step, as you rightly suggested, is I ask her to train someone else, because she doesn't really know it unless she can take someone else through the I, we, you method. And once she's trained someone else, that means as the business owner, I am never going to have to edit my podcast again. And I haven't edited my own podcasts for about 6 or 7 years. And I don't want to.
No, of course you don't. So I'm just going to review some of the things that we've talked about. We've talked about tasks versus teams. And we can out-task things, or we can build multi-purpose teams. Now, James clearly has an unconventional view around team roles, which I really like. And it's often when I speak to people like James, I hear your approach, and I think, oh yeah, we do part of that, or we do it slightly like that. And I can see how we can do things more like that. So there's the task versus teams, there's the team roles, and then the team systems. And I hope that you guys and gals took notes. What was it? I, we, you. I, we, you. What a great way to empower the team. And I'm sure they feel fantastic as well too, when they feel empowered to teach and train.
I think that if you were to talk to my team, a few things would come out. One is the very fact that they've been there for so long. The newest team member I have has worked with me for 8 years, and the longest one, 11 years. So I have 6 people who've worked with me between 8 and 11 years. So I'd say it would be very hard for them to work somewhere else, because the conditions where we work are really great. I'm not demanding. I'm not microscopic in my management. We're very fair. We have really clear stated expectations, and I'm giving them constant feedback. So we don't do an annual 360-degree review. Frankly, it's too late if you go a year before you talk to your team member about how they're going. They should know. You should be able to say, how do you feel you're going to business? They should know exactly, quite accurately, how they're going. So if you can create that structure for them. I would say that my team are a high performance team. We do have values, and one of the values is they have to be ninja good, which implies that they're going to continue learning and developing. And I give them lots of stimulus to develop and learn. When we get a new task that needs to be done in the business, I'll auction it off to them. I'll say, okay, here's the thing we need to be doing in the business. First question is, do you think this is something we can handle in our team, or is it something I should go and get a specialist to do? Now, for SEO, for example, we've brought in a specialist because they said to me, well, I think it's probably good to get someone from outside to be doing that, who's more in the pulse of what is happening. And so I just add them into the team. So they're never afraid to say, no, that's not something we can do. And you'll hear this is a problem with some cultures and with some team members. They say yes and then drop the ball.
Yeah, we don't want that.
They say no. We should get someone out from outside. Same when I wanted really in-depth, long-form content posts. They said probably better we just get someone else to do that, and then they work off that. But they definitely learn how it works, and they integrate with these experts, and they build skills and muscles around it. So that's really important. And I'd say they are doing work they like, because I don't restrict them into a little locked-in, partitioned job role. It's like I say, okay, we're going to do this task in-house. Who wants to do this? In Australia, we'll say, who wants to have a crack at this, right? Low expectations. I just want to see if we can do it, have fun with it, learn about it, add to your skills index, and also a couple of you could do it. So you can play with it. You can talk to each other. You can bounce ideas off each other. And usually I just throw things in there. They put their hand up, they're on it, and then they usually like absolutely surprise and delight me. And a recent example was I needed someone to make little videos for a website that we've been building on the side. It's our side project. And someone put their hand up for that. Now, they were hired as a content writer, but it turns out they used to make videos in their past job, and they love making videos. So the first video that came back, it just knocked my socks off. It's like, where have you been hiding? So this is a big takeaway. If you're watching this and you already have a team, go and discover what skills they have that you know nothing about. One of them might be a gourmet chef. One of them might be a mechanic. One of them could be brilliant at drawing pictures, as it turned out one of my other article writers was. I saw on her social media these beautiful handwritten cartoons. And I said, what are these? And she said, oh, I just do them for my hobby. And I actually built a whole business division around that a few years back, where we sold illustrations. They're so good. And she can take any idea. She could take a picture of you and I, James, and by this afternoon, she will have hand sketched it and then scanned it into the computer and then illustrated it. It's amazing. So they're there sitting there to be, to be unlocked if you handle them the right way.
So it's a great final tip, and that is untap the hidden skills within your existing client base, not client base, team, your team.
It's an interesting point though. I actually train my team with the same effort and care as I do with my paying customers. It's an internal customer.
I think
your team
I think it was Virgin that said our most important client is our staff, or something like that.
I agree with that. If you look after your staff, they look after the customers look after the business, and the business looks after you. I think that's a saying, and it just makes sense. And I always let my team members know how much I appreciate them. I don't take them for granted. The only reason I don't do a lot of stuff is because they're doing it. And we have that great relationship where I'm doing all the stuff they really wouldn't want to do. They're a bit shy to do podcasts. They don't want to go out and forge relationships in new markets, and they don't want to do the high-end coaching stuff. You really need serious experience in the trenches to do the stuff I'm doing at a high level, but they're happy to do everything around that supports that business, and we move forward together.
So speaking of high level, I know that you've got something high level that you need to do in the next couple of minutes. Any final words of advice, and also where can anyone who's viewing this go to get some more information about you, or maybe get a little bit deeper, aside from Googling effective hourly rate James Schramko?
I'd start off at james.co.
James.co. You've got James.co? How did you get James.co?
I bought it at auction, mate. When the .co's started, I got a few first names. I'm not going to say I was lucky. I think I was savvy at the time. I was really into domaining a decade ago, and I've got some crackers, but I've always been waiting to use that one, and I think it's time. And my advice would be, with your team, train them, put the energy into training them. Don't just phone it in. If you get good people and you really develop them, then your life will become easier. And human potential is one thing that always astounds me. Just, I get really emotional about my team because they're just so good, and they care about my business as much as I do, which I think is rare in some businesses. Certainly when you experience retail these days, often you encounter an employee who's really just there for the paycheck. I think my team are much more invested than that. And it's great when you get a high performance team. It does take time. It takes effort, and you will make mistakes along the way. I've discovered that is an area where I help people a lot, is learning how to grow their team and avoid some of those mistakes. And hopefully a few of these tips from today get you started.
And there's one more thing that we'll finish on. I think it's a great place to finish. Did you note how much James was smiling? Most people, when they talk about their teams, usually are grumbling, but not James Schramko. Thank you so much for your time, James.
Thank you, James TUCKERMAN.